What's up guys, time is running out to win our V6 swapped Toyota MR2. For every $1 you spend on our website, whether you're buying performance parts or merchandise, gives you one entry to win the car. You guys can follow the entire build from start to finish on our YouTube channel where we document everything. Good luck, I hope to be handing you the keys.
We called in the big guns for this episode. We got Eric from JSP Fab here burning some welds on the oil pan for the Freak. And we actually have our subframe out that we've built, and it's sitting here on the table. Sort of got this thing suspended up here for now until we can get the oil pan back in after Eric's done. Once that oil pan is in and we can put the subframe back in, we can actually start working on the motor mounts, and that will be the next move on this thing, is figuring out how we're gonna mount the engine onto our cross member. Once Eric's done burning these beautiful welds that he's doing here, he and I will probably discuss that, and I will start building those mounts. And oh, Christmas time, FedEx is here. Well, that was perfect timing. Our products from Vintage Air showed up now, and these are for the Civic. Basically what these are is our heater core and AC stuff, so we can start doing our preliminary mounting of all this stuff, because we are going to run AC in this car. I like to have AC in all my cars so that when I drive them, I can take my chick with me or a friend, and we don't have to sit on the freeway and sweating our backs off. So Vintage Air is coming in clutch on this project. I'm looking forward to open this up. I'll show you guys what we got.
You like the salt bag? You seen him flick the meat and he's like, fling. That's it.
This is a mock-up unit.
A mock-up of what?
Okay, so you guys are probably like, what the heck is that thing? It doesn't weigh anything, it's just a case, and that's exactly what it is. It's just a hollow case version of the heater core and AC system that we're gonna put in this car. Vintage Air makes this for hot rod builders, anybody building custom cars, so that they can actually mock it up in the car without actually using the real unit, so you don't screw that up. So you actually mount this, get this in place, and then when it's time to finalize your build, you bolt in the real unit and plug it in, and you're good to go. And this is cool because it comes with a little direction sheet on how to build the mock-up unit. It comes with mounting plates that mount to it, and then you basically build your mounts off the firewall to suspend this wherever you need it to be. What's cool is we'll mount this up, and we'll build our roll cage around it, and our dashboard will slip over this, and it'll look like a factory unit. Bam, we got air conditioning, we got a heater core, we've got everything solved. So when we're at a track day or we're on our way to the track, we can cool the car off, or if it's raining at the track or it's humid and we get condensation, we can kick this thing on and it'll kill the condensation on the glass and we'll be good to go.
Ooh, some bulkhead fittings?
Yeah. So we have a square one we can use if we want, or a tall one. Alright guys, so today we're on the Civic project. We are out for a little field trip. We're at my homeboy John's shop called JSP Fab in Vista, California. It's a Sunday, so we're actually doing some work around his shop that's not typical for what he normally does at JSP Fab. If you guys don't know about his shop, check it out online at jspfab.com, or click the link below. This is mostly a machine shop, but John's a car guy at heart. And in fact, John was an integral part of my A86 Corolla build that we did many years ago, the one that you guys have seen on my Instagram feed and stories. He is an A86 fanatic, and he actually has a TE27 in here right now that he's building. And as you can see, he's been working on this for a while. He's got some nice notes on here from probably his wife or some of his friends telling him to finish this thing up. And I'm gonna show you guys around the car here in a little bit that he's building here, but the main focus of today is getting the suspension set up on the front of the car, basically the uprights and knuckles that we have to modify in order to make the steering rack that we relocated on the Civic, the FREK, to line up correctly and give us the steering geometry that we need for it to be successful at the track. Let's just jump right into it. Alright, so here we have the DC2 Integra knuckle or EM1 knuckle, and the reason we chose these is because they have a bigger ear on them for the brake caliper pickup. The footprint is larger so that you can put a larger caliper and rotor, and for our application we definitely want that. So I went to the junkyard, picked these up at Pick Apart. John has already prepped them, which is awesome. So basically this is where our lower ball joint goes. And as you can see, it's already been sanded clean here. And then he also made these cool parts. And if you guys follow my Instagram, I've been kind of teasing you guys with a 3D printed version of this. And what this is basically we need to move this steering knuckle down. You could lop this off if you wanted, but we're gonna actually use the factory pickup point for the steering and align it with the lower, and this is how this is gonna fit on here. You can see John already basically grinded a chamfer in the part that we've had water jet cut that he designed, and we're gonna put a spacer that fits between the original steering pickup and the new steering pickup. John has also opted to add a second hole on these lowers so that if we want to add additional steering, we can move our outer tie rods to this position instead of the factory style position, which is over here. This is the idea, and as we update it and weld things and change the overall look of the factory knuckle, we'll go ahead and update you guys. Okay, so John just cut off this aluminum bar stock section, and basically what he's doing is preparing to make a spacer that's gonna fit in here. So the beauty of John is that he's multi-talented. He actually can make stuff like this from scratch, which is really cool. It allows you a lot more ability to do cool things with your car when you're able to do these sorts of things. So we've got one piece ready.
digital readout for measuring the machine position.
Okay.
You know, so we want to make sure that this is a specific length. On like that machine, it's got a digital readout. You can like trim,
right,
go over this much.
So you use a dial or a.
So this is like how it was done pretty much before that. So you can bump up to your part and zero it, right? Mm-hmm. And then we can measure how long the part is and then take off the needs of that.
So when John's not bailing me out of hard projects like the one I'm working on right now with him, he does a lot of machine work, and that's his main business. So as I told you guys earlier, he's a Corolla fanatic. This is a 4AGE block for a Toyota Corolla AE86. John makes his own valve covers, center plate here for either spark plugs or coil packs, and also creates his own, this is a wee little oil cap for a wee little valve cover. But what's really cool is all of these parts are made in-house on the machinery here, his Haas equipment that he has in-house here. Really cool. These are out of his brain, and over the years he's figured out what the best setup is for these parts and how to make them. So these are really cool. This kind of makes me want to own a 4AGE, although those days have long passed me. But these parts are so beautiful that it's actually really cool. He also makes billet engine mounts. This is for a K-swap into a A86 Corolla. Really nice and tidy parts. Real nice stuff. If you guys watch my Instagram stories, you know I've been showing these shift knobs for a while. John always makes me one of these whenever he makes a new batch of shift knobs for all my cars. And I love the fit and feel and finish of all his shift knobs. For whatever reason, they're perfect for my hand, and I love these. This is actually one of the old ones, the weighted version. It's made out of stainless steel. It's very heavy, but he's also made an aluminum version now that are for sale on his website that are awesome. And he's got a bunch of different finishes in aluminum and also in Delrin. So this is a really cool like prismatic finish. He also has the signature fluoro yellow, which I always run. And this time around he did a really cool blue color, which happens to match the Toyota MR2 that we're giving away. I don't see any of the Delrin versions sitting here, but he has two Delrin versions, a white version and a black version. They're both the same shape, but much lighter and stay cool. They don't transfer heat like the aluminum does. One thing I really love about what John does, he actually makes an insert that goes up inside these shift knobs, and basically that allows him to keep a standard thread pitch here that goes into the shift knob, but then the center bore is threaded to whatever thread pitch your vehicle is, which makes these very universal. Really well thought out idea. So as I said, these are the Delrin. They weren't out there in the shop, but I found a little crate of them in here. This must be his stockpile for the sale. But this is the black Delrin. Really nice plastic piece that, like I said, doesn't transfer the heat from the shifter mechanism to your hand, which is really nice. And this is the white version. These are really cool too because they don't really get stained. A lot of times I have dirt on my hands from working at the shop all day. These you can just wipe off with a nice cleaning solution. They stay nice and clean, and it's a really tidy look for inside the car. I think I spoke too soon. I think I got a fingerprint on this one I can't get off.
So the casting has a different cooling rate than the thing we're welding to it. So if we just weld this area,
yep,
the rest of this is going to be cold.
Okay.
And we'll cool down this area of the casting faster than the part that we're welding to it. It can cause it to crack. So if we warm the whole part equally, the cooling down rate is a lot slower and allows the two metals to cool at a slower rate, and it keeps the weld a little bit stronger.
Cool. Science. Using the flame.
So we're torching it after finishing welding to let the two components cool down at the same rate. So even though we're applying heat to it, it's still a lot colder than the actual welded area is. Even though we're using a torch, we're cooling the part down. We're evening the heat all over the part so that it can cool down the two components at the same rate, even though we're adding heat to it. And this is going to reduce the chances of the two metals, the weld in between them, cracking. And we'll do this for a couple of minutes just to make sure that everything cools off together.
That's a snug fit, brother. Yo, yeah, it's still pretty warm.
But it's, I mean, maybe like 150 or 180 degrees.
Not enough to melt my fingers off.
It would be hot, but it wouldn't burn it.
Alright, so again, we're just using a butane torch to allow this to cool off evenly. Again, it sounds weird that we're using heat to cool something off, but the temperature of the weld is actually, and the material is actually more than what this torch makes, so we're actually cooling it down by using fire, which is pretty neat. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cooled down as much as possible, and then we'll let it cool down with the air temperature after this process. A lot of you guys are probably watching this going, man, why did you guys go so thick and so buff on this material here? And I had the same question for John, because to be honest, this is definitely way overbuilt. Just like our K member and everything else that we're building on the front of this car, we probably could have went with less material. And there's a couple reasons why it was built with such thickness of material and type of material and all that. So basically John overbuilt this so that if we needed to clearance anything out of here, we could. There's a lot of tight tolerances in here, especially when the wheel turns, to where we might need to do some small clearancing once the car is at its ride height and we see the full sweep of motion that the upright's going to do. So we overbuilt them. We could probably run the Baja 1000 with these things, but we're not going to do that. This is just for, you know, track and street use. But it's always safer to overbuild than to build to a point where it might actually break. So we're pretty confident that this is a really solid setup. And just to show you guys, like, this is John's TE27 that I talked about earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and move this wheel, and you can see here that this is the factory steering rod that he's running off of an 886 curl, and you can see the thickness of material here is much less than what we're using on ours. Ours is probably twice the size, to be honest. So I'm okay with the overkill. We're not really worried about any weight savings or anything in this sort of area. We just want it to be solid and know that it's going to stand up to some curbs at the track and stuff like that, or any minor incidents. We think the wheel will break before this thing breaks, so the wheel is an easier fix than redoing what we've done here. So yeah, hopefully that answers some of the questions. But let's move on to John's TE27. I said I would talk about this, and I think I've highlighted it in some other videos, but there's a little bit of progress that he's done recently on it, and I want to kind of show that while I'm here. So this is an F20C out of an S2000. It's a fully built F20C by Mission Critical Performance. who's one of John's longtime friends and colleagues, but he used to do head work and things like that. So this is a really buffed up version of an F20. It's got a wee little Garrett turbocharger on it. John custom made this intake manifold. But what's really cool is he's using some of his new products. This is a water neck, billet aluminum water neck that he's fashioned out for the F20 guys, and also a set of billet motor mounts I showed you guys earlier. That's how they look bolted into the car. Really nice and tidy look, and super strong. So I'm really excited to see this project come along. There's a lot of custom work, including how he's restructurizing the car. He's clearanced this back area and front area for maximum angle so that this car can be used at the track as well as on the street. What's really cool is he's actually been able to integrate the 8086 Corolla pedal box and steering column all into this TE27, which is an older model. So this still has the full tilt function. Really cool, just like our EK. The shifter is right next to the steering wheel, which is awesome from a driver's standpoint. And as you can see inside, the intrusion into the foot area for the steering angle, that's going to be done on this car. But those 8086 pedals, Corolla pedals, actually look right at home in this chassis, which is really cool. I'm really liking the way this is coming along, and this is sort of how our EK is going to look once it's done. So having this here in front of me to take a look at and have John sort of explain his thought processes and how he built things is really helpful for our project. So I'm going to be stopping by here periodically, and John has been a huge help on this project with keeping me on track and helping me solve problems like our steering issue that we're correcting today. So without him, this wouldn't be possible. So huge thanks to John for all his support on this project, and I can't wait to take this to the track with John's TE when it's finally done. So let's get back to work.
No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle.
So basically you're gonna run that front to back and put us basically a notch. So the notch that John's creating in our aluminum spacer is basically going to allow us to put a nut and bolt through this hole and not interfere with our spacer. So it's integral if we want to add more steering angle to move it to that inner hole. And in order to fasten that inner hole, we need to obviously put a nut on top. Having this notch in the spacer is important. So you guys are probably wondering why we're using a bolt this long with spacers, and the only reason for that is because John doesn't have the proper length bolt here today. We'll go ahead and spec out a proper bolt that'll get rid of all this length down here, just be a bolt head on one end, a nut on the other end, and it'll just be purpose built. This is just for get us through today. And John went ahead and knocked off the edge of this spacer so that if we want to run the pickup here, we just run a nut and bolt through here to keep that together, and then this pickup can be used with a nut on this side with enough clearance to be snugged up and be useful, which is pretty cool. So to be clear, this is pretty much how this will look. So this will be our tie rod end coming in here. John's just looking for a piece of something he has laying around the shop, just a thread on here so you guys get the visual. But you can understand the steering rack sits out here, and we're going to build a tie rod that sits in here that we can adjust on the rod end here. And then John will whip up a couple spacers that will go here that have a heavy chamfer on them, will allow us to get the articulation that we need out of the the rod end here. This is essentially how it's going to be with the appropriate length bolt in here. This one's a little long. This is the idea. So hopefully you guys can picture it in your heads now. So now guys, this is variation 2 of this setup, which is pretty cool because it actually allows us to move the tie rod into this inner hole. So it allows us to add more angle to the front steering geometry, which is really cool. So I'm pretty sure that nobody out there really wants an angle kit for a Honda Civic, because these aren't the most common drift cars in the world. But I think we just created the first angle kit for a Honda Civic. So to get the misalignment that we need on our new tie rod end that is basically super buff, John had to whip up some misalignment spacers here that allow for basically the travel of the suspension with the steering rack tie rod in mind. So now we've got gobs of suspension travel room here and really trick looking parts, which, being honest, like, skill set that John has and the abilities that he has here in his shop makes stuff like this really pretty simple to do. But if you don't have the knowledge or the tools that he has here, this type of stuff is actually really difficult. A little backstory, I didn't tell you guys this, but initially when I first started putting everything together on the front of the FREK, I reached out to John and said, dude, look at how misaligned the steering rack is. I don't know how I'm gonna make this work. And he just laughed and wrote back, just get the steering rack mounted, I got this. And in my head I'm going, well, I have no idea what he's gonna do, but if he has confidence, I have confidence. So Ricky and I mounted the steering rack, as you guys saw, and this is what John already had in his head. He already knew how to do this because he's done it on the 72 in a similar fashion, or on other projects that he's done. So I guess what I'm getting at is surround yourself with knowledgeable people, never stop learning, and take care of your friends, because without him there's no way I could have got this job done. It's neat to be here and let him show off his skills and what he knows and what he's learned in the car space. And you guys ask me all the time, how did you figure that out, or how did you get into the car world, or how did you do this or that other thing? And a lot of that just comes down to surrounding yourself with the right people, knowledgeable people, and people that can teach you things. And I've been lucky in my life with cars that I've been able to surround myself with some really, really, really smart people, and people that are problem solvers. So again, this wouldn't be possible without John's support and help, so I appreciate that, and I thank him for that, and I hope you guys appreciate it as well. So this is the final, basically the final sort of look of how this will be on the car before it actually goes in. Again, this is not the bolt we're using, this is a temporary bolt. This will be the proper length once it's all said and done. But we were on the last, what I showed you last was on our, basically our angle setup. So if we're gonna want more steering angle, we're gonna move to this hole. But this was always the intended solution for this problem. So again, looks cool, super buff, and I don't think I'll ever have to worry about any of this stuff ever breaking unless I get into a pretty bad situation. So this is awesome. It's gonna work out great for our needs. I'm excited about this. All right, well, I'm gonna zoom back to the shop. I gotta get this car put back together. John has actually bolted these together for me for now, but there's still a lot of work to be done. We've got to press the bearings in, we've got to press the lower ball joint in, and we've got a bunch of other stuff coming that's gonna hang off these spindles, like brakes and things like that. But first thing first, I gotta get back to the shop, get all the parts put back in these, and get them on the car so that we can hook up the steering rack.